Evening all, I hope everyone can hear me. If you can hear me, please let me know in the chat. This is me trying to work out a new scheme for these world eaters, and I was sitting here all alone and thought I'd get on with it in a little bit of company. So hopefully you've all got something to work on and you're not just hoping that I'm going to be wildly entertaining, because I'm going to try and get this colour scheme to work, because I'm struggling like a mofo. I thought I'd be really clever and use inks for this, but I don't know if they're going to work. They've come out really, really dark, and that really wasn't my intention. I'm also using a bit of a weird ghetto setup at the moment as well, which is why I'm a little bit on the wonk. But I'm hoping that it will work out for the better. So I've made a start on these, and this is actually the video footage for this is going to be chopped up and put into the next part of my starting a new army video, where I unfortunately decided to start World Eaters and finish the video on the day the new ones were announced, the new Codex leaked. So all I'm doing at the moment is I've done the white armour, and I've done that with an airbrush, and then I've used this crazy AK ink for the blue, and now I'm doing the laborious and very dull step of blacking out all of the stuff that's not supposed to be white or blue. Although I'm going to cheat a little bit and not actually black everything out. Some things I'm going to try and put the first layer base coat down. I'm hoping it goes over, because it's just sort of white or this sort of dark blue and mostly white. I'm hoping I can just put it straight over it. So we'll find out. This is literally me experimenting with colour schemes on these couple of test models to try and make something that works. But more importantly, something that I can do repeatedly over a whole army. Because it's easy to get a good looking model, it's hard to get a good looking army quickly and repeatably. My Blood Angels were a labour of love over years and years and years. And thus, the colour scheme is wild, it's all over the place. And I want to try and avoid that for these ones if I can. This is literally the worst step of any paint scheme. Just blacking out the detail. And why do these models have so much trim? I thought when I started this project it would be quite a quick thing to do. I was sorely and wildly wrong. With how long it takes to paint all of this trim. But I really think this step is worth it. Just painting the black over the armour before you put the metallics on just makes them all pop so much better. This is also a bit of an experiment, and I'm seeing if I can get away with doing a paint stream with my little boy actually allowing me to do it. So we're going to find out how long I can go for before he starts screaming the house down. Hi, Clint. They do play similarly to Blood Angels, but I think they've got enough of a difference that it's worth doing. And I think it depends also how you play your Blood Angels, because I've always played my Blood Angels as a more Codex chapter. I like to use a decent amount of armour in there. I love my Terminators. Obviously I love my jetpacks as well. Whereas these guys are just frothing fanatics. And I think there's a lot of assimilation. If you play Flesh Terrors, then I think there is probably quite a lot of crossover. There are differences, but horde of chainsaw wielding fanatics kind of sums it up. But in all honesty, it's not so much... I don't get that much time to play, and if I'm playing, I'm generally playing my Blood Angels. So this is more an aesthetic choice than anything else. It really comes down to, I'm playing on Paints and World Eaters because I really like Khan the Betrayer. Do you need a better reason than that? Evening Frank, thanks for joining me. I'm trying to come up with a decent colour scheme that I can do over a whole army of these, and I've got to do it quickly because I don't have a lot of spare time. So I want a quick but effective colour scheme, and frankly I'm fed up with painting red, which is why I've gone with the sort of like Heresy era white and blue scheme for these. And at the moment I'm regretting my life choices because there is so much trim to try and black out. It's going to take me forever. So what are you working on, Frank? Anything? Clint, same? I have to say, I was a bit apprehensive about that blue, but once it started putting trim on it, if I get the camera to focus. Come on, little camera, focus for me. There you go. I think it's the focus. Sort of, more or less. I'm actually really pleased with the way that the blue looks once I've got the black on there. I think it's going to look good with the brass. Frank's still at work in California. My Land Raider and Blade Guard are getting prepped primed tonight then. So how big a squad are you going for with a Blade Guard? Is it going to be a big 6-man one, or is he talking little 3-man units? And which Land Raider have you gone for? So I've got a bit of a thing for this Heresy one. I just like the way it looks, so I've decided with these guys that I'm going to go with the Heresy looking vehicles where I can. There's got to be a better way of painting all this trim than just sitting here and brushing it on. Yeah, admittedly, this would have been a lot easier if I was painting in red. I could just spray the whole thing red, and that would have been a lot. I could have put the gold straight over the red, or the brass straight over the red, and it'd look good. But if you try and put brass over white, it looks dreadful. So it would have saved me this kind of blacking out step. If anybody knows any kind of kick-ass Chaos Space Marine players that have got some crazy hack for doing all the trim, I'm all ears. Frank M. 3 more to go with my 3 finished Blade Guard, regular Land Raider. Oh, classic one. I remember when that model came out and it had this phenomenal splash in White Dwarf. Because that was back at the era when they used to put art with miniature releases rather than a picture of the actual model on the box. So the Blade Guard going to go in that Land Raider, or is it for somebody else? I'm picturing in my head 6 Blade Guard, Chaplain, Land Raider. Enhancement for fights first, hold the middle. Although John reckons that the Librarian is better than the Chaplain, but he flicks backwards and forwards on that. The Librarian lets you spike a bit higher, but I really like the +1 to wound that the Chaplain brings. Let me know if the sound is all on the wonk. I've sort of guessed these settings by eye. It might not come across, but this is absolutely not a planned stream. More of a, I'm painting these models, this trim is annihilating me. I'm hoping that someone in the chat knows a better way of doing it. Frank, that was the idea, but I have an Impulsor 2, so it's probably points dependent. Yeah, I mean, it's a funny one. The Impulsor with the I like to think the Impulsor is the defensive way of doing it and the Land Raider is the aggressive way of doing it. So it kind of depends on what you want to achieve with it. So I like to play quite a heavy pressure list. So for me, things like Land Raiders and Blade Guard and that are your second wave units. So your first wave, you want something cheap and nasty, just to stick it on an objective right at the beginning of the game. Ideally stuff with infiltrate, things like scouts and that are perfect. Their job is to die. Or if you can, to cage your opponent in a little bit so they can't do scout moves. The Blade Guard is what I bring in to try and hit kind of turn 2, turn 3. To try and hit whatever took my stuff off the mid board. And I want to have this kind of escalation going on there. So I want something that I can sacrifice. The beauty of the Blade Guard with the Chaplain with the fights first attach enhancement is that he makes a very good turn 2 one, because you can stick him up the field turn 2. If you're in a Land Raider, you can kill whatever was on the objective, take the objective and sit there and hopefully have a good chance of killing whatever's coming turn 3. Obviously that's going to be matchup dependent. You're not going to be doing that against Tau. There's zero point in doing it. I think that's the problem with things like the Fights First enhancement now, because they're so expensive. And if you do fight them into Tau, what are you doing with it? What's it going to achieve? Yeah, now they've only got one combat unit in the whole army. I see Tamia. I hit the like button. I hope you're having a good day. I am having a good day, Hadley. Yeah, so I used the Tamia to do the white armour underneath. So it's flat white and a kind of dark sea grey. So I did the whole thing with the dark sea grey, and then I built up the white to build a bit of a gradient, and that's going to be the white armour. I really like my Tamiya, especially the white paint, because you can thin it a lot further than you can with normal acrylics. So for building up colours in a really smooth gradient, I think they are better. It is a pain in the arse, I haven't used the X20A, but I think the finish is worth it. I haven't used anything in the airbrush that tops it anyway. Flint Blade Guard's my favourite unit. They are very cool. I think when 8 come out, we were all a bit sort of not sure about that with the Primaris aesthetics. It was very, very clean. And then kind of Blade Guard come out and reminded us that actually GW can still make cool stuff with a bit of interest to them. Yeah, they were very classic Marines, if you know what I mean. Hadley, I play against Tau a lot with it, and the Sanguinor 2, it's like useless. Yeah, good taste. I use flat white for my Zenithal sometimes, love it. Yeah, it's absolutely brilliant for that. Frank M, Tammy's a joy with an airbrush. It is. I think it's the best. I don't always use it for a Zenithal. Sometimes, if I'm doing a quite solid colour over the top of it, so I don't need a perfect gradient, I'll often just use a white ink. I love the fact, in all honesty, it's because you can just drop it straight into the airbrush generally without thinning it or anything. But if I want a bit more control, then that's when the Tamiya comes out. X20A goes so hard though, yeah it does. It's good stuff. I do sometimes use it with my other paints as well. Why is there so much trim? Nice and neat. The other problem with this sort of airbrushed gradient is one screw up and you're in big trouble. Because it's really difficult to try and go back and cut it out again. I've had to do it a couple of times on the armour, and I'm hoping that when I use the oils and that later it kind of covers up some of the slightly different tones. But considering these are supposed to be a line infantry unit, Frank M, trim is the reason I don't have a Chaos Space Marine army. Yeah, I forgot how annoying it was. It's been years since I've painted any real Chaos Space Marines. And I can thoroughly recommend not painting Chaos Space Marines white with trim. I think if they were black it'd be a bit easier, because at least you could just go straight in and you wouldn't need this kind of blacking out stage. You can tell I'm concentrating because the more I concentrate, the more my head blocks the camera. Hadley. Yeah, no secret for the trim. Not long finished Rubric, Sorcerers and Gilliman. Tried dry brushing, Tamiya, pen, etc. And just brushed. Yeah. Everything I've tried so far hasn't worked. But this is why we do these test models. You know, if I wasn't a sucker and bought half the army already, I'd probably do these test models and go, ooh, I'm not sure I want to do a whole army of this. But I'm a sucker. And not only that, I'm a sucker that committed on camera. So I'm going to make it work if I can stop my head getting in the shot. I had a little look on the channel, and it's been about 2 years since I last did one of these painting streams, which just so coincidentally lines up with the birth of my child. But it's been so long that I really struggle to find all the like the graphics and the sound and things like that. So I've absolutely no idea what the music is because I made the playlist a very long time ago and I can't remember. I just saw a sign that said stream playlist, click here, so I did. So it's a bit of a mixed bag, this. I think a lot of this seems to be sort of like synthy stuff from sort of Deus Ex, or I definitely recognise the Deus Ex main thing. Right, that's ahead. Let's see. On to the next dude, right? Start with a big brush. This one's not going to be quite so bad because it's a little bit less closed off than the previous guy. The shoulder pads on the head, just blue tacked on. Same in the backpack. Because I knew it was going to be annoying with this white armour. It's kind of get in places. and any screw ups are going to be really, really obvious. So I wanted to minimise the chance of making. Well, I wanted to maximise the chance of making as few mistakes as possible. I'm going to put it that way. I went to a painting class a few years ago with coat paint, and Andy Wardle and Henry Steele were taking the piss out of my love for giant brushes. So this is a size 6. I just like the way that holds a lot of paint. You can have a nice pointy tip on it. It's got a beautiful tip on this brush. The only problem is it's just fat, which means getting it into small spaces is a bit of a pain. Still a little bit got the hump, but as soon as I started this project, GW announced the new codecs. Apart from the hateful trim, these new Corn Berserker models are gorgeous. I mean, they suffer from being monopose, I'll admit, but they're so dynamic. think in the hands of a properly good painter, you can make them look really good. But also, because there's so much detail on them that, admittedly, that's not really my thing. I prefer a slightly cleaner aesthetic. I think you get a really good effect just with lots of washes and things like that, because there's loads of detail to hold the wash. So if you want to go with a kind of gritty, dirty, grimdark look, I think you could make it look really good really fast. Trying hard to use the airbrushed white to try and save myself some time later on. So I'm going to use a lot of transparent paints to do some of the detail areas, which means I need to be really careful not to get any black on them, especially things like the skulls, pouches, that sort of thing. This track sounds like some sort of Metroid remix. No! Come on, come off. Can I get away with it? Yes. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is why we varnish things. Because we can just rub the paint off as long as we're quick. So if you're just joining us, you get to witness me going steadily insane as I paint all the trim on these World Eaters test models. So if you saw the earlier video, you'll know that I decided to try and start an army completely from scratch, and part of that means that I need to work out what kind of colour scheme I want. So I've got these couple of test models here. I think I worked out a colour scheme on paper. Now I'm actually painting it to see how well it works and what kind of mistakes I've made. So far, apart from silly mistakes, there hasn't been any real problems with the colours I've picked, but the blue was maybe a little bit darker than I initially thought it was going to be. But the big mistake was thinking that I could do white armour with all this trim in any kind of reasonable time frame. Because white armour, as it turns out, is hateful with all this trim, because any mistakes are immediately obvious. And really hard to cover up. But I still think that Berserkers with the original World Eaters colour scheme will look ace. Because this white is going to really allow any kind of like blood splatter. It's really going to highlight it. And as I've said before, I'm thoroughly fed up with painting red armour, or gold armour for that matter, for someone with Blood Angels and Custodians. So this is the first completely new army project I've done since 8th edition, for myself anyway. So it's quite a learning curve, reminding myself of the rules that I might tell other people, but I've never been very good at practicing. Things like, don't buy 2,000 points of army based on what you think looks or is good. There's a hair on there. That's the pair of cats. By the sound of it, trying to break down my head. Is it? Yes. Oh yeah, go on. Here's a controversial question. Do people bother painting the back of models? So, I know lots of people who just paint sort of Instagram and things like that. Don't bother with the back because I'm not going to take a picture of that. Now, I tend to do the back, although I don't put as much time into it as I do with the front. But I don't paint the underside. Because people shouldn't be going around looking up my model's skirts. So, bottom of tanks, things like that, I won't paint. Because I don't see the point. Oh dear, getting there. Getting there without ruining my armour. I think they're still listening to Metroid by the sounds of it. That had a good soundtrack. Part of the thing you do when you work on these test schemes is work out silly stuff that you don't really consider, like, what do I do with these grenades? You don't want to spend too much time on them. But you can't just ignore them either. A few more people popping up in the chat. Well, in the stream. Not so much on the chat. Come and watch me be tortured by excessive trim. And actually, I've noticed some fairly soft detail in some areas of this model. Like some areas where the trim just sort of like on the other side of this leg, where it just sort of morphs into the leg itself. There's no distinct lines. So you're just sort of like painting it on as a design rather than anything else. Which used to be really common for miniatures years ago, when they were cast in far less pieces. But you don't see so often on models now. Back of that leg is dreadful for it. So these are the newish Khorne Berserkers. So they came out with the advent of the World Eaters Codex. So that had been the end of 9th. And they do look good. Yeah, I'm just surprised by some of the soft detail on them. And I do still have issues with monopose models. They're fine if you only want one squad of them, but who plays, you know, World Eaters and goes, do you know what I want? Only one squad of Khorne Berserkers that is exactly 10 strong. Especially now in the new codex we can run them in 20s. And I have to admit that 20 Khorne Berserkers led by Khan the Betrayer in Berserker Warband for +2 strength, +1 attack, and that strat which gives them an extra point of AP, does appeal to me. I'm sure it's not very competitive because you're not hiding 20 Khorne Berserkers anywhere, but at the same time, that'd be hilarious to just yeet into things. You know? I can't imagine many things are going to live through that. Not with Khan, who's become an absolute combat monster, as he should be, although he seems to have misplaced his fancy plasma pistol somewhere. but the detail on this leg is fairly non-existent. So not only am I having to paint a ridiculous amount of trim, I'm having to actually add trim where there is bits of trim missing. Yeah, I was really surprised as well. Let me just finish this bit and I'll show you some of the unpainted ones I haven't undercoated, so it sort of makes it a bit easier to see. But don't get me wrong, the important bits of detail are there. And let's be honest, who looks at the legs of models? But if I just grab one of these random other ones, I'll knock that for a second. That's not too bad actually. You sort of see around the insides of the legs, if I can get it to focus. There. The inside of the leg, sort of around here, look. There's no distinction between the leg and the trim, it's just a slope. And the same here, here's a really good example. So that's just a slope, there's no actual trim there. It goes, look, flat, slopes down into the leg completely, whereas the trim line should be across here. And that's a little bit disappointing for models like this. You know, that's an outside leg, so that's going to be really obvious when I paint this, that there is actually no trim modelled in this section. It just runs from leg to flat. So I'm just going to have to paint that detail on and then hope that with a bit of gore and things like that kind of covers it up. Yeah, this leg's just as bad, slopes down. The trim's not properly defined. You know, I'll grab another model. Here we go again, outside leg, trim stops being defined around there. So this side of the leg is fine, the back of the leg though, look, doesn't bother. Inside of the leg is just sort of weird bulbousy bit. So it really does seem mostly around the legs, but the legs really aren't very well designed. And that's also significantly slowing me down. Well, I have to work out where that paint should be. Now that leg's particularly bad for it. I've just drawn a line basically and said that's where the trim's going to be. Yeah, Frank, I think you're right. These aren't... It's not defects on the model so much as it was designed that way. Almost certainly to make it easier to injection mould. But it's not even like these are sort of like really quick and easy to build models. So if they were sort of like easy build kits, only in a few pieces, I could sort of give a little bit more leeway to that. But they're not. They're in a wildly unnecessarily large number of pieces, as are all GW kits these days. Bollocks. Again, this is why we varnish things. We can do a bit of clean up. Can't make that perfect, but it shouldn't show too much. One thing what this trim does do is makes painting the ribbing of the joints in the power armour a lot easier because the ribbing is black and I'm painting the trim black. So that's handy, because that can be a real pain on my Blood Angels models. Or worse than the Custodians ones because they've got smaller kind of join areas. Evening, Philip Arrigo. Slowly. So what you're seeing me here is just working out the colour scheme for the World Eaters. So on the video that we put out, I decided that I was doing them. I'd worked out what I was going to buy and I bought the first few models. And then part 2 I'm working on at the moment, and that's going to be kind of test models and kind of first steps that way. And then if I work out this colour scheme and I get something half decent out of it, I might, if people want it, do a how-to guide. But I've got to work out I'm going to paint it myself first. So at the moment I'm suffering because I made the decision to paint white power armour, so all of this trim needs doing in black, which is a long and laborious process. And this is just a test model, so I've got what, 25, 27 more of these to do after the testers. But Mark's posted on the Discord the other day, there's a doubles tournament coming up next year. And I like the idea of taking these to it, which means that I need to get them painted. And due to the fact that I publicly committed to doing them in Classic Legion colours on the video, I've really better not back down now. Of course, those Legion models didn't have all of this bloody trim. I do prefer the white and the blue though. I just feel it's got a bit more uniqueness to the look than the modern just red. I need to decide what I'm going to do about these feet as well, so I'm going to have a little look at the what they do on here. So they paint the feet red. So I think I'm going to follow that and keep them red. Well, white in my case. Thanks, Philip. That's very kind of you. These bits should be dry done out, so I'm going to take that off there. Back on in for now. I can use the holder. This guy. head. Jog pads. The wet part's getting a bit dry. So, if anybody's got any comments on the kind of the setup I'm using now, I've changed the setup from what it used to be. And I keep getting my head in it, and I haven't really got a good solution to that right now. But like the sound and things like that, can people hear me? What I'm trying to do is set up like a really quick, so that we can start the streams again more regularly. Maybe do them more often, but a little shorter than they used to be. Cheers, Matt. Seems a bit quiet. Okay, I'll try moving the mic a little bit. So the mic's to my side here. I don't know if anybody else has got kids, but when my little boy was born, it kind of threw the idea of sort of like streaming out the window, because he's a terrible sleeper. And he'll get up about 3 or 4 times a night. And that meant every time I started a stream, he would start crying and I'd have to end it again. But touch wood, we've been okay so far tonight. He's 2 now, so I'm hoping that he'll start sleeping through a little bit more. I can start streaming a bit, because I do quite enjoy it. It doesn't really do anything for our subscribers or anything like that, but is in numbers wise. But it's something that's quite fun to do. Especially because more than once someone in the chat has given me a good idea. On how to solve a painty conundrum, although nobody has yet given me a good idea of how to do, or how to stop spending so long on this flipping trim. Yeah, if anything sinks this project, it's me losing my temper doing trim. Yeah, so my boy's the same age as that at the moment, Philip, which is hopefully a good sign. I think that's all the black done on that one, so I can start working on the other bits. I haven't actually checked this. Is the background music actually coming through, or am I just listening to this on my own? Yeah, I'm thinking about doing whether I could do it in reverse, but I'm not sure how well it'll work with white paint, because trying to get in there with a little brush and paint grey and then white seems almost like an exercise in futility. I think I could definitely do that if I was doing red, but then if I was doing red it'd be a lot easier again, because I could paint the brass straight over the red without any problems, but painting that kind of brass over white just loses any depth. The metallic paints really do need to go over dark colours. I've just noticed that the World Eaters symbol is actually textured in the centre. I think for the actual world in the middle. I'm trying to decide now whether I need to paint that green. Let's get the old box art out again, see if we can see anything. Well, that's useless. Yeah, so there's one guy in the background that I can just sort of about see. There's a couple. So yes, they do sort of paint a bit of green in there. But they've just put a little bit of verdigris to sort of represent it. I think I'm going to leave it, if I'm honest. You can go mad painting little details, and these are supposed to be line infantry. So what are you working on at the moment, Philip? Are you painting at the moment, or are you just chilling out, working? I want to see if I can mix in a few of the Heresy miniatures. If they do some kind of assault marines on foot, I think they'd make really nice Khorne berserkers. Yeah, add some skulls, paint them in classic colours. Especially if I can get hold of some kind of berserker heads. Although what I really want is mohawks. So like the old original, I say original, it's more modern. The Heresy era Khan has got this fantastic mohawk. Now I know that there's a whole reason for the fancy name for them, the funny little bunny ears. And they are cool. But a little with artistic license, I think I can probably get away with making a few. I think I'm going to paint these skulls because they're a bit sort of stylised. I want to paint them brass rather than as bone. that. Right, helmet time. I really like this helmet. It's almost got a slightly Primarity look to it. Ooh. Nearly there. Because it also helps this guy doesn't actually have any eyes, so just some sort of like vague slits, which means I can't be blamed if I don't paint the eyes on this guy. So that'll save a bit of time. I don't mind painting eyes, but it does take a bit of time. Ready? So I'm going to finish up this guy and then I'm going to call it about. Let me know in the comment section or in the chat if these kind of like really sort of laid back, chill Streams are worth doing if anybody's interested in watching them. And I'll see if I can make some more time to do it. I say it's been a couple of years since we did it regularly, but I used to do it every Monday. I think I've worked out how I can set the rig up quite quickly, so it's not something that's... It's something that I can put together quite quick. Right, I'm happy with that. Might have had to get that bit trim on the side there then. Okay. Hello Aridin, long time no see. You've just joined me in time that I'm about to pack up and call it a night. But I'm glad to see you, it's been a long time. I've just asked people if these streams are something people still want to see. And if they are, I'll look at doing them a bit more regularly again like I used to. I'm working on my... So this is just test models for World Eaters. So we put a video out a couple of weeks ago, kind of getting started with a brand new army. And the idea with that video was not World Eaters specifically, but more like how you can get started just in general with any new army. Because the process to start a new army is the same whatever army you want to collect. Or at least for me. First look at the lore, look at the art, look at the models, go from there. And it doesn't matter if I'm going to try and collect World Eaters or something else. At the end of that video I said about the new codex actually dropped, well, previews dropped just as I'd finished recording that. And a lot of people were like, well, are you going to release it? And John and Mark were sort of, should you release it or not? And I was like, well, it doesn't really make a difference. Don't get me wrong, the data sheet's different, and the army list that I'm going to have to build is probably going to be different, although I still at this point haven't seen the points. But the concept of how you put an army together doesn't really change. And it's the same process that I've followed for God knows how many armies. I think at one point in time, I think I've connected every army in 40k. I might not have finished every army in 40k. My Gene Stealer cults are still sitting in a box. But if I'm honest, I only got those because I got the box set with them and the Custodes, and I quite like the motorbikes. So, we've trimmed up these two guys today. This guy's still waiting trim, but I need to call it a day there because it's a work night. Funny colour changing there on my stream. Anyway, so thank you very much for joining me and not leaving me alone staring at these trim encrusted bastards all on my lonesome. And like I say, if these sort of chill streams are something you'd like to see, please let me know in the comments. And hopefully I'll see you on another one. Cheers, guys. Bye-bye.